在这里，然后我们把这个屏幕交出来给我们的同工哈。你看一下，我们一起做一个祷告。亲爱的阿爸父神，感谢你哈，我们今天在这里要把以下的时间，我们领读跟读的时间完全交托在你的手上。神求你开我们的眼目，让所有的弟兄姐妹们都能开他们的眼目，让他们好好的学习，透过我们这个另外一种语言，英语的语言来学习这个。同时我们也渴望今天接下来我们的老师更有爱心和耐心的来帮助我们，带领我们好好的把这个经文读好。谢谢神，听我们的祷告，我们把今天所有一切的事工都交托在你的手上。我们这样祷告是奉靠耶稣基督的名求，阿们。好，我们把时间交给今天的主持人，谢谢。
Hello, Bethan. This is Justin, your host today.
Hi, Justin. How are you?
Fine. I'm feel pretty well. What about you?
Doing well. Thank you.
Thank you. Please pray for us before we read.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you once again for the time to come together, to read your word, to learn your word. I pray that you will help us to honor you in the reading, and that we will live it out during the week. Thank you for the blessing of who you are and just how gracious you are to us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. 现在我们开始今天的跟读环节，想跟读的同学们，在自己的名字前加上3位数的学号。还没有的也可以去苏珊老师那申请学号。第一天的第一位是279号 Emily, please. 279号 Emily。那我们先叫下一位292号 Eunice。
Hello, FN, this is Eunice. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 13.
Judges chapter 13.
Verse 20.
Verse 20.
As the flame blazed up from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame. Seeing this, Manoah and his wife
Manoah and his wife
fell with their faces to the ground.
Thank you, Beth Ann.
313号 Jackie。
Hello, Jason. This is Jackie. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 13, verse 21.
Judges chapter 13, verse 21.
When the angel of the Lord did not show himself again to Manoah and his wife, Manoah realized that it was the angel of the Lord.
The angel of the Lord. Thank you, Beth.
392号 Ruth。
Hello, Bethan. This is Ruth. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 13, verse 22.
Judges chapter 13, verse 22.
We are doomed to die,
We are doomed to die,
he said to his wife.
he said to his wife.
We have seen God.
We have seen God. Thank you, Bethany.
395 Sunny.
Hello, Basin. This is Sunny's favorite place.
Judges chapter 13, verse 23.
Judges chapter 13, verse 23.
But his wife answered,
But his wife answered,
if the Lord had meant to kill us,
if the Lord had meant to kill us,
he would not have accepted
he would not have kept
a burnt offering and grain offering
a burnt offering and a grain offering
from our hands,
from our hands,
nor shown us all these things,
nor shown us all these things,
or now told us this.
or now told us this. Thank you, Basin.
3967.
Hello, Basin. This is 7th rules, please.
Judges chapter 13,
Judges was 13,
verse 24.
verse 24.
The woman gave birth
The woman gave birth
to a boy
to a boy
and named him Samson.
and named him Samson.
He grew, and the Lord blessed him.
and the Lord blessed it. Thank you, Basin.
14号 Grace Lee.
Hello, Bethany. This is Grace Lee. 5, please.
Judges chapter 13, verse 25.
Judges chapter 20, verse
13.
13, verse 25.
And the Spirit of the Lord
And the Spirit of the Lord
began to stir him while he was in Mahanadan, between Zorah and Eshtaol.
and Ashtar. Thank you, Bethany.
15号 Peter Lee.
Hello, Bethany. This is Peter Lee. 5 verse, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 1.
Judges chapter 14, verse 1.
Samson went down to Timnah
Samson went down to Timnah
and saw there a young Philistine woman.
and saw there a young Philistine woman. Thank you, Bethany.
23号 Helen.
Hi. Beth Ann, I'm Helen. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 2.
Oh, I can't see the. Oh, here. Judges chapter 14, verse 2.
When he returned, He said to his father and mother,
He said to his father and mother,
I have seen a Philistine woman
I have seen a Philistine woman
in Timnah.
in Timnah.
Now get her for me as my wife.
Now get her for me as my wife. Thank you, Bethan.
34号 Esther。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Esther. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 3.
Judges chapter 14, verse 3.
His father and mother replied,
His father and mother replied,
Isn't there an acceptable woman?
Isn't there an acceptable woman
Among your relatives or
among your relatives or
among all our people?
among all our people?
Must you go to
Must you go to
the uncircumcised Philistines?
Uncircumcised Philistines
To get a wife.
to get a wife?
But Samson said to his father,
But Samson said to his father,
Get her for me.
Get her for me.
She's the right one for me.
She's the right one for me. Thank you, Beth Ann.
37号 Angel。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Angel. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 14,
Judges chapter 14,
verse 4.
verse 4.
His parents did not know
His parents did not know
that this was from the Lord,
from the Lord,
who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines.
confront the Philistine.
For at that time they were ruling over Israel.
Thank you, Beth Ann.
55号 Lydia。
Hello, Bethan. This is Lydia. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 5.
Judges chapter 14, verse 5.
Samson went down to Timnah
Samson went down to Timnah
together with his father and mother.
together with his father and mother.
As they approached the vineyards of Timnah,
As they approached the vineyards of Timnah,
suddenly a young lion came
suddenly a young lion came
roaring toward him.
Thank you, Bethan.
77号 Christina。
Hey, Bethan, this is Christina. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 6.
Judges chapter 14, verse 6.
The Spirit of the Lord came upon him.
The Spirit of the Lord came upon him
In power so that
in power, so that
he tore the lion apart
he tore the lion apart
with his bare hands,
with his bare hands,
as he might have torn a young goat.
as he might have torn a young goat.
But he told neither his father nor his mother what he had done.
Thank you, Bastian.
85号 Eunice。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Eunice. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 14,
Judges chapter 14,
verse 7.
verse 7.
Then he went down
Then he went down
and talked with the woman, and he liked her.
and he liked her. Thank you, Beth Ann.
86号 Felicity。
Hello, Bastian. This is Felicity. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 8.
Judges chapter 14, verse 8.
Sometime later, when he went back to marry her, he turned aside to look.
He turned aside to look
at the lion's carcass. In it was a swarm of bees. And some honey.
Thank you, Bastian.
113号 Grace。
Hi, Beth Ann. This is Grace. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 9.
Judges chapter 14, verse 9.
Which he scooped out with his hands.
Which he scooped out with his hands.
And ate as he went along.
And ate as he went along.
When he rejoined his parents,
he
gave them some.
He gave them some.
And they too ate it.
And they took it.
But he did not tell them.
But he did not tell them
that he had taken the honey.
That he had taken the honey
from the lion's carcass.
From the lion's carcass. Thank you very much, Beth Ann.
127号 John。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is John. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 10.
Judges chapter 14, verse 10.
Now his father went down. To see the woman. And Samson made a feast there. As was customary for bridegrooms.
As was customary for
bridegrooms.
Thank you, Beth Ann.
167号 Sarah。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Sarah. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 11.
Judges chapter 14, verse 11.
When he appeared, he was given 30 companions.
He was given 30 companions. Thank you, Vincent. Thank you very much.
173号 Happy。173。
Just Happy 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 12.
Judges chapter 14, verse 12.
Let me tell you a riddle,
Let me tell you a riddle.
Samson said to them.
Samson said to them,
If you can get me the answer,
if you can give me the answer
within the 7 days of the feast,
within the 7 days of the feast,
I will give you 30 linen garments.
I will give you 30 linen garments
and 30 sets of clothes.
And 30 sets of clothes. Thank you.
178 Johnson。Johnson， 我们现在听不到你的声音。那我们先叫下一位，等你调试一下。188号 Lydia。
Hello, Bethan. This is Lydia. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 14.
Judges chapter 14.
Verse 13.
Verse 13.
If you can't tell.
If you can't tell.
Me the answer.
Me the answer.
You must give me.
You must give me
30 linen garments.
30 linen garments.
And 30 sets of clothes.
And 30 sets of clothes.
Tell us your riddle.
Tell us your riddle.
They said.
They said.
Let's hear it.
Let's hear it. Thank you, Bethan. 他读得这么好。
224号 Master。
Hello, Bethan. This is Master. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 14.
Judges chapter 14, verse 14.
He replied, out of the eater.
He replied, out of the eater.
Something to eat.
Something to eat.
Out of the strong. Something sweet.
Out of the strong, something sweet.
For 3 days.
For 3 days.
They could not give the answer.
They could not give the answer. Thank you, Bethan.
239号 Teresa。
Hello, Bethan. This is Teresa. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 15.
Judges chapter 14, verse 15.
On the 4th day.
On the 4th day.
They said to Samson's wife.
They said to Samson's wife.
Coax your husband into explaining.
Coax your husband into explaining.
The riddle for us.
The riddle for us.
Or we will burn you.
Or we will burn you.
And your father's household to death.
And your father's household to death.
Did you invite us here?
Did you invite us here?
To rob us?
To rob us? Thank you, Bethan.
22号 Luca。
Hello, Bethan. This is Luca. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 16.
Judges chapter 14, verse 16.
Then Samson's wife threw herself
Then Samson's wife threw himself
on him, sobbing,
on him, sobbing.
You hate me.
You hate me.
You don't really love me.
You don't really love me.
You've given my people a riddle.
You give my people a riddle.
But you haven't told me the answer.
But you haven't told me the answer.
I haven't even explained it.
I haven't even explained it
to my father or mother.
To my father or mother.
He replied.
He replied.
So why should I explain it to you?
So why should I explain it to you? Thank you, Bethan.
26号 Eagle。
Hello, Bethan. This is Eagle. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 17.
Judges chapter 14, verse 17.
She cried the whole 7 days.
She cried the whole 7 days
of the feast.
So
on the 7th day, he finally told her, because she continued to press him. She in turn explained the riddle to her people.
Thank you, Bethan.
Next is me. Hello, Bethan. This is Justin. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 18.
Judges chapter 14, verse 18.
Before sunset on the 7th day.
Before sunset on the 7th day.
The men of the town said to him.
The men of the town said to him.
What is sweeter than honey?
What is sweeter than honey?
What is stronger than a lion?
What is stronger than a lion?
Samson said to them.
Samson said to them.
If you had not plowed with my heifer.
If you had not plowed with my heifer.
You would not have solved my riddle.
You would not have solved my riddle. Thank you, Bethan. 现在我们第一轮结束，开始补教环节，请刚刚没有被叫到的 followed 的同学举手。385号 Joyce。
Hello, Bethan. This is Joyce. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 14.
Judges chapter 14.
Verse 19.
Verse 19.
Then the Spirit
of
the Lord came upon him in power. He went down to Ashkelon, struck down 30 of their men, stripped them of their belongings, and gave their clothes To those who had explained the riddle.
Explain the true riddle.
Burning with anger,
Burning with anger,
he went up
to
his father's house.
his father's house. Thank you, Beth Ann. Thank you.
178号 Johnson。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Johnson. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 20.
Judges chapter 14, verse 20.
And Samson's wife was given
And Samson's wife was given
to the friend who had attended
to the friend who had attended
him at his wedding.
him and at his wedding. Thank you, Beth Ann.
279号 Emily。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Emily. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 13, verse 20.
Judges chapter 13, verse 20.
As the flame blazed up from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame. Seeing this, Manoah and his wife fell with their faces to the ground.
Thank you, Beth Ann.
381号 Josephine。
With the faces.
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Josephine. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 13, verse 21.
Judges chapter 13, verse 21.
When the angel of the Lord did not show himself again to Manoah and his wife, Manoah realized that it was the angel of the Lord.
Thank you, Beth Ann.
现在我们开始第2轮。279号 Emily。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Emily. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 13, verse 22.
Judges chapter 13, verse 22.
We are doomed to die,
We are doomed to die,
he said to his wife.
he said to his wife.
We have seen God.
We have seen God. Thank you.
292号 Eunice。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Eunice. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 13,
Judges chapter 13,
verse 23.
verse 23.
But his wife answered, If the Lord had meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and grain offering from our hands,
from us hands,
nor shown us
nor show us
all these things,
or
now told us this.
or now told us this. Thank you, Beth Ann.
313号 Jackie。313号 Jackie。
Hello, Bethan. This is Jackie. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 13, verse 24.
Judges chapter 13, verse 24.
The woman gave birth to a boy.
The woman gave birth to the boy
And named him Samson.
and named him Samson.
He grew, and the Lord blessed him.
He grew, and the Lord blessed him. Thank you, Bethan.
381号 Josephine。
Hello, Bethan. This is Josephine. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 13, verse 25.
Judges chapter 13, verse 25.
And the Spirit of the Lord
And the Spirit of the Lord
began to stir him while he was in Mahanadan.
while he was in Mahanadan,
Between Zorah and Eshtaol.
and Esther. Thank you, Bethan.
385号 Joyce。
Hello, Bethan. This is Joyce. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 1.
Judges chapter 14, verse 1.
Samson went down to Timnah
Samson went down to Timnah
and saw there a young Philistine woman.
and saw there a young Palestinian woman. Thank you, Bethan.
392号 Ruth。
Hi, Bethan. This is Ruth. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 2.
Judges chapter 14, verse 2.
When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife.
Thank you, Bethan.
395 Sunny。
Hello, Bethan. This is Sunny. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 14,
Judges chapter 14,
verse 3.
verse 3. Verse 3.
His father and mother replied, Isn't there
Isn't that
an acceptable woman among your relatives or among all our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife.
To get a wife.
But Samson said
to
his father, Get her for me.
Get for me.
She's the right one.
She's the right one
for me.
Thank you, Bessel.
3967
Hello, this is 7. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 14.
Judges chapter 14,
verse 4.
Verse 4.
His parents did not know that this was from the Lord. Who was seeking an occasion to confront the Philistines. For at that time they were ruling over Israel.
Thank you, Bethany.
14号 Grace Lee.
Hello, Bethany. This is Grace Lee. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 14.
Judges chapter 14.
Verse 5.
Verse 5.
Samson went down to Timnah together with his father and mother. As they approached the vineyards of Timnah, suddenly a young lion came roaring toward him.
Thank you, Bethany.
15号 Peter Lee.
Hello, Bethany. This is Peter Lee. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 6.
Judges chapter 14, verse 6.
The Spirit of the Lord came upon him in power. So that he tore the lion apart. With his bare hands. As he might have torn. A young goat. But he told neither his father nor his mother what he had done.
Thank you, Bethany.
23号 Helen.
Hi, Bethany. This is Helen. 1 sentence for me. Thank you.
Judges chapter 14, verse 7.
Judges chapter 14, verse 7.
Then he went down and talked with the woman, and he liked her.
Then he went down and talked with the woman, and he liked her. Thank you, Bethany.
34号 Esther.
Hello, Beth, and this is Esther. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 8.
Judges chapter 14, verse 8.
Sometime later,
when
he went back to marry her, he turned aside to look at the lion's carcass. In it was a swarm of bees. And some honey.
And some honey. Thank you, Beth Ann.
37号 Angel。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Angel. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 14.
Judges chapter 14.
Verse 9.
Verse 9.
Which he scooped out.
Which he scooped out.
With his hands.
With his hands.
And ate as. He went along.
He went along.
When he rejoined. His parents. He gave them some. And they too ate it. But he did not tell them. That he had taken. The honey from. The lion's carcass.
Thank you, Beth Ann.
55号 Lydia。
Hello, Beth Ann.
你那边
I
可
didn't
能
hear.
有一点卡顿，我们待会儿再叫你好吗？你先调试一下。
听不见吧？
有点一卡一卡的。
5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14.
现在可以。
5 words?
Judges chapter 14. 又听不见了。
I'm not sure I'm hearing her right.
哦，现在可以了吗？
Maybe now.
Yeah.
Now his father went down.
Now his father went down.
To see the woman. And Samson made a feast there.
As
was customary for bridegrooms.
Thank you, Beth Ann.
77号 Christina。
Hi, Beth Ann. This is Christina. 5 words, please.
Judges chapter 14, verse 11.
Judges chapter 14, verse 11.
When he appeared, he was given 30 companions.
He was given 30 companions. Thank you, Beth Ann.
85号 Eunice。
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Eunice. 3 words, please.
Judges chapter 14.
Judges chapter 14.
Verse 12.
Verse 12.
Let me tell you a riddle. Samson said to them. If you can give me the answer within the 7 days.
Within the 7 days
of the feast, I will give you 30 linen garments
30 linen garments
and 30 sets
and 30 sets
of clothes.
of clothes. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Beth Ann. Our reading time is over, and Happy will do the translation for your testimony.
Hello, Beth Ann. This is Happy. How are
Hi.
you?
I'm good. I hope you are.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. I'm ready.
All right. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
愿你的国降临，愿你的旨意行在地上，如同行在天上。
This is the third phrase of the Lord's Prayer that we will discuss this morning.
这是主祷文的第3句，我们今天早上要讨论的。
God is able to perform this without our asking.
上帝能够成就此事，即便我们不祈求。
It will happen whether we request it or not.
无论我们是否祈求，这件事情必会发生。
So why does he bother putting it in?
那么为什么还把它加在这里呢？
He wants to include us in his work.
他想让我们参与他的工作。
Philippians 2:13 declares, "For it is God who works in you both to will and to work for his good pleasure."
腓立比书2章13节说：“你们立志行事，都是神在你们心里运行，为要成就他的美意。”
It is for his pleasure to work through us.
透过我们工作成就他的美意，他喜悦透过我们工作。
Our heart and actions can join with him to see his will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
我们的心和动作可以和神联合，看见神旨意行在地上，如同行在天上。
I believe a yearning within every Christian's heart is to see the kingdom of God return as the triumphant king.
我相信基督徒心里有一个渴慕，就是看见神国作为得胜的君王再来。
Revelation begins with Jesus saying he will return and ends with his saying he will return.
启示录以耶稣说他会再来开始，也以他说他会再来结束。
Revelation 22:20 states, "He which testifieth these things saith, Surely I come quickly. Amen. Even so come, Lord Jesus."
启示录22章20节说，证明这些事的说，是的，我必再来。阿门。主耶稣啊，我愿你来。
John adds his own commentary at the end in excitement for Jesus' return.
约翰在结尾加上了自己的想法，为耶稣的再来感到兴奋。
Yes, come.
是的，愿你来。
However, I think this phrase from the Lord's Prayer is also a look for God's kingdom to begin reigning now.
然而，我认为主祷文中这句也是对神国度现在开始掌权的一种期待。
How?
如何？
We can't truly want or expect God's kingdom to be established until we have made him Lord within our own lives.
如果我们不让神在我们生命中做主掌权，我们不能真的想或期待神国度的降临、建立。
We should submit totally to his desires and plans.
我们应完全降服于神的旨意和计划。
I can say, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. But if I don't live like God is controlling my life, do I really mean it?
我可以说愿你的国降临，愿你的旨意成就。但是如果我的生活不像有主掌管，不像有主的样子，我说的是真话吗？
Our lives should be examples of our dependence upon him and the fruit of his spirit.
我们的生活应该是我们依靠他的模样，是圣灵果子的展示。
God's will is accomplished in heaven without hindrances or opposing forces.
神的旨意在天上通行，毫无拦阻。
We need to be totally submissive.
我们要完全降服。
We should also be praying for his kingdom to expand here on earth by praying for friends and loved ones who do not yet have a saving knowledge of Jesus.
我们应为神的国度的拓展，我们应为神国度在地上的拓展祷告，借着我们为还未获得救恩知识的亲朋的祈祷。
As more people turn to him, his kingdom on earth grows and more followers submit to the working of his will.
随着更多的人转向主，他的国度在地上拓展，更多的信徒降服于神旨意的运行。
Romans 12:1 and 2 asserts that we are not to conform to this world, but are to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, so that we will better know what is the will of God, that good, pleasing, and perfect will of God.
罗马书12章1至2节明确说，我们不应该效法这个世界，而是要心意更新而变化，叫我们更清楚何为神的良善、纯全、可喜悦的旨意。
Thank you, Han.
Please lead us read loud prayer. 大家请跟着老师读主祷文。
Our Father in heaven,
Our Father in heaven,
hallowed be your name.
hallowed be your name.
Your kingdom come.
Your kingdom come.
Your will be done.
Your will be done.
On earth as it is in heaven.
On earth as it is in heaven.
Give us today our daily bread.
Give us our daily bread.
And forgive us our debts.
And forgive us
As we also have forgiven our debtors.
as we also have forgiven us.
And lead us not into temptation.
And lead us not into temptation,
but deliver us from the evil one.
but deliver us from the evil one.
Amen.
Thank you,
And
Thank you.
Thank you.